Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another Top Cut breakdown. Today we're going to talk about the PPG online invitational event that took place over the weekend. This was an online webcam event, but it was actually a best of 3 tournament, so a little bit different in terms of what we're used to with the online stuff. That's why you'll see like Reboot Gohan in this Top Cut. It was actually best of 3. So we're gonna get into it, guys. If you are new here, definitely subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss a video. If you guys want to help support the channel, also kind of get ready for events just like this, really competitive high tier events, either IRL or online. Check out the Patreon down below. Get to read the articles there, see where my head's at competitively. There's even some coaching options there if you're interested. That being said, let's get started. So we have the top 16 here. I believe it was over 100 players, if I heard that correctly. I believe it was over 100 players. So we have the top 16. 3 Broly making top cut is actually an insane phenomenon. Like, we very rarely even see Red Broly top as of late, so to see 3 break it in here is kind of insane. 3 Dark Broly, 2 Mecha Frieza, 2 Soul Striker of different variants, we'll talk about that in a little bit, 2 Vegeta, 1 Invoker, 1 King Piccolo, 1 Reboot Gohan, and 1 Turles. So overall, this format actually looks very, very aggressive, and we're seeing like different things like this from week to week, even between events. Like last week we covered 4 different events, and some of the top cuts were more mid-range, some of them were more control oriented, some of them were a little bit more aggressive, but this one is just like full on aggro, man. Like, you know, 3 Red Broly, Dark Broly kind of mid-rangey, but also teeters towards aggro. Mecha can be very, very aggressive, especially if the opponent taps out. And then you've got like your Janemba Soul Striker, your Vegeta, your Reboot Gohan. This is a super aggressive meta, so pretty different. And I think when you just look at like an online event, I think best 3 versus best of 1 does make a difference there. I think the control decks do very well in best of 1, just because like it's kind of hard to answer Blue Baby and Invoker in best of 1 in a lot of scenarios, as where Reboot Gohan, which was the toughest deck to answer in best of 1, at least in terms of an aggro deck, wasn't really a thing anymore, and a lot of decks kind of phased out Red Broly. But man, come back with Red Broly. Let's start talking about the rest of the decks. So we have Dark Broly actually winning the event. It's definitely been some time since we've seen Dark Broly win an event, and we're definitely seeing a big phase out for Red. Now, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of Red Broly in this top cut. I did look over the deck lists, and at least in the Red Broly decks, Violent Rays wasn't like super prevalent, at least in the main deck, which definitely gives Dark Broly a leg up. And King Piccolo and Launch, not really anywhere to be found. So I think, you know, what hurts Dark Broly more so than Red Broly playing Violent Rays is the mid-range deck playing Violent Rays, because even when Dark Broly and Red Broly are playing against each other, and let's just say like Dark Broly has, you know, Protect of the People in the main, or like Bardock the Tenacious to try and floodgate Red Broly, or Red Broly vice versa has like Violent Rays, which they can even search, which is pretty good. You're kind of getting into this battle of like, okay, who gets caught with their pants down first? Who gets caught with their floodgate? That player probably loses. So, you know, Violent Rays doesn't automatically ensure the matchup against Dark Broly like King Piccolo and Launch kind of do. Like, if they see enough Violent Rays as King Piccolo or Launch, their strategies can just grind out Dark Broly and make the matchup a lot easier. Red Broly doesn't necessarily do that same thing. Dark Broly, though, I believe 2 of them made the top 4. One of them obviously ended up going to win the event, which is kind of insane. Like, we haven't really seen this type of, you know, deep push of Dark Broly making it super far into a tournament, which is kind of cool. Now, I did look over the list. The lists are posted on PPG's Patreon. They are free to view, so make sure to check that out. I'll even leave a link in the description down below if you guys want to check out the deck list. But yeah, so Dark Broly, I believe all the lists, there was only one that I couldn't get access to because there's an error with the link, but the other 2 I saw were playing Heartfelt Plea. I've seen some more discussion about, you know, whether or not Dark Broly should be playing Heartfelt Plea. Some of the best of 1 lists have been succeeding without Heartfelt Plea in the deck. I think that kind of makes sense, because in best of 1, there's sometimes you want to cut certain cards from your deck so you can make concessions for, you know, tech cards you need for bad matchups and whatnot. I think in best 3, though, no reason not to play Heartfelt Plea. I think the downside of Heartfelt Plea, which, you know, if you draw it dead, if you draw it after you're awakened, yeah, it can be a dead 10k combo, which is unfortunate, but the Vegeta super combo, putting it to the bottom of your deck, just really makes that downside really, really negligible. So I think the upside of Heartfelt Plea, just potentially critting another one of your opponent's lives or drawing more cards and being a 30k triple striker and playing it for free, I think the upsides just heavily outweigh the downsides. So in my opinion, at least a best of 3, you should probably be playing Heartfelt Plea. Best of 1, again, I can kind of see cutting it if you really feel like you need text for certain matchups that you feel or you struggle with. But I think Heartfelt Plea is too good to pass up on. And again, Red Broly, man, we haven't seen this in such a long time. I mean, the deck is really, really annoying to play against, but I gotta say, just from like, you know, a meta perspective and seeing things shift up, it's kind of cool to see the deck come back in action. I don't think it's nearly unbeatable. There are certain times, though, like, you know, depending on what you're playing, if you're playing certain control decks, certain mid-range decks that can't really interact with what Red Broly is trying to do, it can be a really big headache, which is definitely kind of annoying. Cool thing I saw here, both in this deck and in decks across the room, which we'll see in just a bit, a lot of decks are playing the Heroine Lineage SCR, and one of these Red Broly lists was also playing the Heroine Lineage SCR, which is kind of cool. Like, if you don't have Red Broly, or, you know, a lot of Red Broly decks, I honestly don't think you need to play SS4 Broly. I think it's a very win more card. If you get to your 6-drop, odds are you're probably winning that game unless something goes very, very wrong or you're up against a very high skill player. But 9 times out of 10, if you drop the 6-drop Broly against most players in this game, I think you're probably winning. The card is just way too powerful for an unexperienced player to come back from, in my opinion. So I really don't think you need SS4 Broly. So Heroine's Lineage in that scenario, to me, seems like a great option. What's really cool, though, at least 2 of these lists were playing Flight of the Grand Eagle in the main deck. Now, what's interesting about this card is it's actually a really good check to the turn 2 Victory Strike deck, which is not technically out yet. The turn 3 Victory Strike, though, is now a thing because we have Evolution Booster, and you can still play Cell Surge and do a turn 3 Victory Strike, I believe, especially because the set 12, set 13 ban list rather is not in effect yet. But it was still kind of interesting to see Flight of the Grand Eagle in the main deck, because I don't think Red Broly needs to worry about Cell Surge Victory Strike too much, just because I think you're so fast and so aggressive, you should be able to win the game before that even becomes a problem. But Flight of the Grand Eagle, it is definitely a good card in general. Like, when you put a really wide board out there like Red Broly, minusing your battle cards to get the free negate definitely isn't a very hard cost to meet. So it was pretty cool to see this kind of like innovation, if you will, in Red Broly. That was definitely pretty neat. Then we have 2 Mecha Frieza. So, as we always see with Mecha Frieza, very, very diverse in terms of deck building. One of the lists was just kind of playing your typical good yellow stuff with the Lord Slug Namekian engine. Again, sometimes we see the Namekian engine, sometimes we don't see it. This one list was playing it. The other list, though, I gotta say, this is crazy, but really, really cool. Was playing Belma Double Devastation and Android 18 Steadfast Technique. So I can kind of understand why both these cards were played, at least from my perspective. Obviously, I didn't really talk to the player who did this, but I kind of get it. So here's what I'm thinking. So Android 18, yeah, in Mecha Frieza, you play a ton of extra cards. Sometimes when you're going for game or someone's kind of going all in on you, obviously those extra cards are dead combo power. So Android 18, I believe, is playing 2 copies, as 2 of can turn any of your dead extra cards, like a dead United Assemble or a dead Planet Vegeta, turn those into combo power, actually turning into an 11k combo, which is pretty sweet there. And then Belmont Double Devastation, I also kind of get it, because Mecha Frieza can turn super aggressive out of nowhere. Like, a lot of times Mecha Frieza will play very reactively, but if you ever tap out or give your opponent a solid opportunity to Bergamo you, like during your turn, and then goes back to their turn, you're tapped out, they have 3-4 energy, just start ripping United Assembles, start playing battle cards, attacking, and then just to continue extending your attacks, you have Overwhelm, and you also have Belmont Double Devastation. So I don't think this will be like a main deck trend that really catches on in Mecha, but I do think the player that, you know, decided to include these cards, it was a very, very cool choice. Definitely makes sense to me, at least from those perspectives. Then we have 2 Soul Striker making top cut here. One of them was Soul Striker Janemba. We did see this last week, so kind of cool to see the deck making a consistent run, topping 2 events in a row. The other was actually a red-blue Soul Striker, which is kind of insane, actually. It was playing, you know, Beer Super Combo, Cooler Arrival, and Full Power Frieza 100% Overdrive. And as far as I could tell, it wasn't playing the Rebirth of Justice package that Marcus kind of made popular with his Blue Baby deck. I think it was just hard casting this Full Power Frieza, if I'm not mistaking that. I'm pretty sure that's what it was going for. So turn 5, play this guy, swing. And it's actually not a bad thing in this meta, because the top decks right now are yellow, black, and red. So yellow can give this guy a problem. Blue and green can also give this guy a problem. But against black and red, which red should be the majority of what you're facing, it just seems to be the most popular at this point. Red and black can't answer Full Power Frieza 100% Overdrive, at least not on the main board, and they got to be siding pretty specific cards to even try to deal with this. Like black, for instance, we have to side deck the Deborah counterplay, which hasn't, I don't think it's ever really been popular except for like maybe in Hatchiyak decks. So pretty cool meta call there. Nice to see like a very different version of Soul Striker topping the event for sure. Then we've got Vegex. So 2 copies of Vegex here. Interestingly enough, neither of them were Catapesla Vegex, which I actually think is a really powerful version of the deck. These were more so just like your typical standard Vegex stuff. They were playing the Demon God Demigod 5-drop, so Vegex is almost taking a little bit more of like a mid-rangey route. Like, you have all your free play aggressive cards, don't get me wrong, but you also have Demigod to kind of just sit on and grind out your opponent if they're playing a bit more of a defensive deck that sometimes Vegex would normally struggle with. And at least one of these lists was playing the Heroine's Lineage SCR. Again, it's just a very good SCR to play. Stealing one of your opponent's battle cards is actually cool for an aggressive deck. I should have mentioned this with Red Broly as well. But like, you can be very defensive with Lineage. Like if your opponent goes in with a 7-drop or less and they like, you know, just dump hand, you steal it, battle's over, you probably win the game right there. But what's cool about this card in both Vegex and Red Broly is that if you're on turn 3 ready to go for game, this could actually be a very aggressive card as well. You know, just swing, activate battle, take one of their high cost battle cards that have a lot of attack power, and just start swinging face. It's honestly a pretty cool concept. I do definitely like it a lot. Then we have one Invoker. Again, not a very control-oriented meta here. We don't see any Blue Baby. We don't see any Sin Shenron. But it's still kind of neat to see that, you know, Control still has a presence, right? Control's definitely not gone. And I wouldn't look at this tournament and just say, like, man, Control's dead, right? Like, this is 1 week out of several where we've just seen, like, very, very different trends going on. So, yeah, Control didn't do so hot in this format, in particular, for this particular event. But Control's still good in the set 12 meta. That's definitely a fact. Then we have one King Piccolo. From the list that I saw, very, very standard. Nothing too crazy about this King Piccolo list, but I mean, the deck's obviously still insane. What's really crazy, though, is this deck has actually kind of taken over Dark Broly's spot as of late in terms of being the most dominant deck in any given top cut and, you know, very likely to win the event, move on to top 4, things like that. This format, though, this tournament, not so much the case. Very interesting. Maybe some of the more aggressive decks, you know, kind of felt or found ways to deal with King Piccolo. Like, we did see Reboot Gohan in this top cut, which we'll talk about in just a second. But that's a really bad matchup for King Piccolo. So the fact this is an online event, also best of 3, allowing Reboot Gohan to be played, that could actually be a nightmare for King Piccolo. So definitely something to keep in mind. But I'm still surprised it didn't do better than it turned out to do here. We do have the Reboot Gohan here. This was a mono green variant. Oftentimes you either see mono green or you see blue green. This time it was mono green Reboot Gohan. Again, being a best of 3 event, you're able to play Reboot Gohan, and this deck can still be very, very impressive. Like I said, against King Piccolo, insanely good matchup for Reboot Gohan because they start at 6 life, man. Like, you can triple strike them to death before they ever get a chance to awaken, which is kind of insane. Like, that makes Reboot Gohan a really strong counter to what's got to be one of the best decks in the format. It's even got some pretty solid chances against Red Broly, depending on how many Bas they can get set up, depending on how well they hit off Planet Vampa and whatnot. It can also do pretty well against Dark Broly as well. Like, if you're Dark Broly and you don't have a good amount of negates in your hand, or you don't have, like, Brainwash in your hand and an energy ready to go, Reboot Gohan can really take you out of nowhere. Now, I noticed that the SCR of choice for this deck was Great Mass Sand Primal Carnage, which is always a great SCR in Reboot Gohan. Like, lets you deal with blockers if you're going for game, lets you deal with your opponent's, like, you know, attempt to kind of shotgun you in the only opportunity they can do it. But again, talking about what I was talking about before, the Heroine Lineage SCR, I think it's a pretty cool aggressive SCR. Like, Reboot Gohan, don't get me wrong, a lot of times you want to win the game on turn 2, but I think if your games ever go to turn 3, if you're playing against a more experienced player that knows how to drag out the game a bit, I think Heroine's Lineage SCR could actually be a pretty cool option for this deck as well, and it's obviously much more affordable than just about any other SCR in the game. So I kind of want to just talk about that since I thought about it. And then finally, for rounding it off, we have Turles. This is actually a Universe 2 version of Turles. Rebrand Pretty Cannon Unleashed is a really interesting card that came out of Evolution Booster. Basically, it's top 5, adds any green heroine or U2, and then you can pay another energy to play certain U2s from your deck. This list also played Himezi. I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing that right, but it's actually a Tournament of Power U2 card that reduces the cost of your U2 battle cards. So, yeah, again, deck list will be in the description below. I'll have the link there, but this is a really unique take on the deck. It was really, really cool to see this. I think that this engine is very, very good. Just kind of needs the right green leader to do it. Turles, on the face of it, seems a little bit weird to me because there's so many cards you want to include for the Turles engine itself. So it's not like necessarily the most generic green leader in terms of trying to fit that in there, but still cool to see it nonetheless. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, guys. Definitely a bit of a shakeup from the meta we've been seeing over the past few weeks. I do want to know in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.